Tonight, kicking off a major lawsuit. Canadian soccer stars look for payback. Players on the national women's team and a $40 million case over a controversial business deal by board members. Pierre Poilievre's new take on transgender issues.
Female spaces should be exclusively for females, not for biological males.
And the concerns that go beyond politics.
It's bad for society. It's bad for vulnerable people.
Plus, Ottawa's attempt at putting the brakes on the accelerated problem of auto thefts. Also, the fallout from a close call with a police cruiser.
Scared, a little shocked, and then kind of angry.
And Queen Bee breaks another remarkable barrier. Making music history.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. We begin tonight with the legal showdown over a business deal national athletes in one of Canada's most popular sports allege was not negotiated in their best interest. The Canada Soccer Players Association, the union representing players on the women's senior national team, has launched a $40 million lawsuit against 15 current and former Canada Soccer Board members who signed a media and sponsorship contract in 2018 with a private company called Canadian Soccer Business. The statement of claim alleges the board's negligence assigned rights at a price that fell well below their reasonable market value and diverted valuable revenues that could have been used for training and programming and to ease significant constraints on Canada Soccer's finances. And joining us now to walk us through the specifics of this lawsuit is TSN senior correspondent Rick Westhead. Rick, what exactly is the union alleging here?
Well, I think it's actually a watershed moment, Omar, because I can't remember a time ever before that national team athletes have actually sued members of a board of director of a national sport organization. They're saying that the more they learn about this media and sponsorship deal that was signed in 2018, the more they think it stinks, that it was basically money that's gone out the door and that a professional men's soccer league is actually benefiting from the work that the women's national team players are doing.
Now, as we know, Rick, there has been a long-standing battle over fair pay for female soccer players. How does this legal case tie into that issue?
And it's all tied together. Remember, it was about a year ago that the women said that they were going on strike and not going to play in an international tournament. Well, within 24 hours, they had backed down because Canada Soccer threatened to sue the players individually. The more they've learned over the last year about this deal that was signed in 2018, the more they've, realized it's a problem and come to this decision today to sue.
Next steps?
Well, I think you're going to see affidavits, and it's going to be a long legal battle. I'm not sure how much will happen immediately. But what will be interesting to see is what happens when the main Canadian companies that sponsor Canada Soccer, think about CIBC and TELUS and Nike and Toyota, what did they do when they realized they no longer have the rights because of this lawsuit and the players' threats to use any of the player images in their marketing? Are they still going to want to be part of the soccer ecosphere?
Very significant issue. Rick Westhead, thank you so much for your reporting on this.
You're welcome.
The federal Conservative leader's latest position on trans rights is once again generating debate in this country. Comments he made today are in keeping with how his base feels, but outside of it, critics accuse him of exploiting culture wars for political gain. CTV's Judy Trin explains.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is clear. Transgender women should be banned from female spaces.
Obviously, female sports, female change rooms, female bathrooms should be for females, not for biological males.
It's a stance widely supported by his party. At last year's Conservative convention, 87% of delegates voted for a policy that gives women the safety, dignity, and privacy of single-sex spaces. The NDP points out trans women aren't a major threat to female safety.
What women have said that they're concerned about is harassment and violence perpetrated by men.
People like Pierre Poilievre would rather pick a fight with trans kids. That's not leadership. And that's not a game I'm going to play with them.
The Prime Minister accuses Poilievre of exploiting U.S.-style culture wars, while trans advocates say similar policies have cost lives south of the border.
When you have large groups of people demonizing trans people, there are going to be individuals who act on that.
Just this week in Oklahoma, where there's a transgender bathroom ban, a non-binary 16-year-old teenager died after being beaten in a high school girls' washroom. Last spring in Ottawa, protest erupted outside a public school board meeting after some parents argued their daughters didn't feel safe using inclusive bathrooms. Hannah Hodson is transgender and used to work for the Conservatives. She says talking about the divisive issue will boost fundraising.
Angry people donating money. But it's bad for society. It's bad for vulnerable people. It's bad for nuanced conversation about, like, what do we want our society to be?
This is the second time in a month that the Conservative leader has weighed in on issues of gender identity. 2 weeks ago, Poilievre said he opposed puberty blockers for gender-diverse people under the age of 18. Omar.
All right, Judy, thanks. With March break coming up and the likelihood of increased travel, there was another warning today of a potential measles outbreak from Ontario's top doctor. Right now, there are 4 cases of the contagious viral infection in Canada, 2 of which are in Ontario. Doctors in the U.S. and Europe are also tracking a rise in cases and say fewer people are getting immunized, which could help the potentially deadly disease make a comeback. The federal government provided a new financial boost to combat rising auto thefts, mostly for policing. But the lack of money isn't the only problem. So is holding perpetrators accountable. CTV's Michael Couture on why a trio of alleged criminals wasn't even tried and walked free.
As police around the world attempt to make a dent in global car theft networks, the Canadian government announced another $15 million to help police across the country tackle the problem. But it would seem the wheels of justice may have a flat. 3 men accused of operating a luxury car theft ring in Montreal had their charges stayed because the case took too long to go to trial.
Obviously, a circumstance where somebody cannot be brought to trial in the appropriate timeline and therefore is not subject to a criminal prosecution is unacceptable.
The Court of Quebec judge ruled he had no other choice, saying the 3-year gap between being charged and the trial date violates the accused's right to a speedy trial. It means the month-long investigation by Montreal police was all for naught.
The police department have the same concern. When we arrest people, we want to make sure that they're going to be going to the court.
Now, the Crown blamed delays on the pandemic, which had created a backlog. Tuesday, Quebec's Justice Minister tabled a bill to reduce court delays and to add more judges to Quebec's depleted provincial ranks.
C'est un échec pour le système de justice.
Simon Jolin-Barrette says when there is a stay of proceedings, it's a failure of the justice system. And legal experts point out it's a countrywide issue.
It can break the public's faith in the criminal justice system not to have these important cases heard in a timely manner.
The federal public safety minister says all levels of government continue to look at the judicial system to ensure it doesn't become a barrier to the work being done to crack down on car theft. Omar.
All right, Mike, thanks. A Toronto woman is speaking out tonight after she was hit by a police cruiser, but police claim it wasn't actually a collision. You be the judge. CTV's John Woodward has the video.
I see the police car out of the corner of my eye and just kind of braced myself.
Watching this video is still unsettling for Rachel Wharton. The Torontonian was walking to work in January when she crossed Dufferin Street. Dashcam video shows a police car turning and then it strikes her, knocking her phone out of her hand and startling her.
Scared, a little shocked, and then kind of angry. Because I, as a pedestrian, had the right of way.
She says the driver asked her if she was okay. She had some choice words for him, and then he kept driving without giving her any contact information.
I realized how lucky I really was because he was going fast around that corner, and he obviously saw me at the last second.
She got the video from a driver on the spot and made a complaint with the Toronto police. She said a detective phoned her recently and told her there would be no ticket. The reasoning, she says, was that there was no collision that resulted in an injury. The Toronto police says its officer stopped before a collision occurred with the pedestrian who grabbed the push bars on the front of the vehicle. The incident was investigated, and seeing as the contact resulted in no injuries and/or damage, this incident did not meet the definition of a collision as defined by the Highway Traffic Act. The incident may have understandably startled the pedestrian, for which the officer apologized. However, this was not a collision and the pedestrian was not hit by a police car. Lawyer David Shelnut says that definition may work for insurance purposes, but not for public safety.
In this case, there is contact, but now they're saying that it's not a collision. So it's really seems like the law is up to the TPS's own interpretation.
Driving safety at the TPS has been in the spotlight after CTV News obtained data on over 1,000 automated tickets received by police vehicles. Another turning police car hit a cyclist on Bloor Street earlier this month, causing him serious injury. Warden says she's worried a recent bump in the police budget could lead to more vehicles on patrol and more crashes.
These are the police officers that are supposed to protect us, and just driving very carelessly.
She wants some of their new money to go to driver training.
So the collision that wasn't a collision isn't likely to go any further. Wharton says she's not interested in making any more complaints. She says she knows what happened to her and believes that video backs her up. Omar?
All right, John, thank you. The head of Boeing's 737 MAX jet program is leaving the company after a terrifying mid-air incident last month. A door on one of Boeing's commercial planes blew out, leaving a gaping hole. The jet is Boeing's best-selling plane, but has had repeated problems over the past 5 years. Canada summoned Russia's ambassador today over the death of opposition leader Alexei Navalny, calling on Moscow to launch a full and transparent inquiry and to release Navalny's body. The diplomatic condemnation comes as Russia continues to make gains on the battlefield in Ukraine. CTV's Joy Malbin reports.
Marking a major military victory, Russia's President Vladimir Putin celebrating the capture of a key Ukrainian city, Avdiivka, where Russia has raised its flag over what's left. Ivan never made it out, speaking to his sister. He waited for a prisoner exchange that never came. Instead, the Russians shot Ukrainians' wounded soldiers and sent video of it. The city would not have fallen, says Ukraine's president, if Kyiv had received weapons.
If Ukraine will be alone, you have to understand what will be. Russia will destroy us, destroy Baltic, destroy Poland, and they can do it.
The battle for democracy waiting on Washington, and a $95 billion U.S. aid package with money for Ukraine. All of it in limbo after Donald Trump told House Republicans to block it, the former president still refusing to condemn Putin. On Fox News, Trump even compared his legal troubles to the persecution of Alexei Navalny, who died in suspicious circumstances, imprisoned by Putin.
Vladimir Putin is watching what happens in Washington closely. I think he has always assumed from the beginning of this conflict that he can wait out the West.
As yet another American, 33-year-old Ksenia Karolina, a dual U.S.-Russian citizen, was arrested by Putin's regime. Part of the Baltimore Ballet, she's accused of treason for donating just over $50 to a Ukrainian charity.
If we do not protect her as an American citizen, nobody else will.
With Russia about to launch a major offensive, the European Union approved its 13th package of sanctions. Washington also promising penalties to choke off the Kremlin's war machine, announcing new sanctions on Friday. Omar?
All right, Joy, thank you. On the eve of National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, we have a first-hand account tonight from a victim of the cunning crime. She shared her harrowing story with CTV's Adrienne Gobriel.
It's an elusive crime that preys on the vulnerable in communities across the country.
I never would have thought it would happen to me.
Nearly half of all police-reported human trafficking cases take place in these 5 Canadian cities, with Toronto leading the way. That's where Nicole, who asked we only use her first name, was moved to by the man trafficking her.
So that I was far away from my family, my support, and my friends.
Nicole was attacked by a dog as a child. While her scars largely healed, she grew up self-conscious about her appearance until she met an older man who made her feel valued.
He was wonderful, you know, definitely a Romeo in a lot of ways, just, you know, spoiling you with attention and gifts.
It felt like a storybook.
Definitely, like, you know, Prince Charming riding in on a white horse.
More than a decade ago, former Conservative MP Joy Smith championed legislation that ultimately strengthened sentencing for traffickers operating in and outside of Canada. She founded the Joy Smith Foundation, which her daughter now runs, in a tireless effort to raise awareness.
This is in many ways a real growing crisis in communities right across our country. It's extremely prevalent, and oftentimes it's playing out right in front of people and they don't even recognize that it's happening.
It's also a lucrative illegal business. A sex trafficker makes an average of $280,000 per year off a single victim.
I would go on these dates with these businessmen, and they would pay to sit with me and talk with me, and as soon as I got into the car, I would have to hand over the money to my trafficker. It got to the point where I was exchanging sexual services for money.
After 2 years of being trafficked, Nicole was saved by her family. Now a mother and a Sunday school teacher, she's sharing part of her story in hopes of saving another.
There's hope. There's always hope.
Research has shown that 1 kilometer from where I'm standing right now, or in any other community across the country, a young person is being lured into sex trafficking. Awareness and education is the key. Omar.
All right, Adrian, thank you. Coming up, Canada's population shift.
It's definitely happening sooner than what we would have thought in the recent past.
Millennials outnumber baby boomers for the first time.
This ain't Texas. Ain't no hold'em.
Plus, Beyonce goes country and tops the charts.
So pack your Lexus, throw your keys out, stick around, round.
Well, a new demographic has taken the lead in Canada. For the first time ever, millennials are outnumbering the once dominant baby boomers. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver on the impact.
A symbolic shift is underway in Canada. For the first time in 65 years, millennials aged 28 to 43 have overtaken the massive baby boomer generation.
We have to adapt and get used to change, right?
Record levels of immigration have propelled millennials into their new top spot. From January 1st, 2022 to July 1st, 2023, Statistics Canada says 457,354 millennial temporary and permanent residents arrived in Canada. That pushed millennials to be 23% of the population, a peak that is not expected to be surpassed. Compare that to the boomers, who peaked at 40% of the population in the mid-1960s to early 1970s.
For now, it's not something that is necessarily a big surprise. In the long term, it's definitely something that we will see having impacts.
Millennials are considered to be the most educated generation in Canada, but with high home prices, interest rates, and skyrocketing rents, many say achieving the financial stability of their parents feels impossible.
How expensive life is getting in general is pretty terrifying.
The rentals right now are crazy high, and not everybody can afford that.
What experts say also needs to be addressed is the capacity of the healthcare system to deal with boomers as more and more hit their mid to late 70s.
It's at that age when people need more help, more support. Health conditions, unfortunately, take their toll.
And that is why healthcare is expected to remain a top issue, along with affordability.
Millennials are the ones being punched in the face over cost of living. It's not people over the age of 55 plus who have largely paid down their mortgages or paid them off entirely.
The growth in millennials is helping to push up the working-aged population, and Statistics Canada says millennials could help fill some of the existing labor shortages. Omar.
All right, Annie, thank you. One of Alabama's largest hospitals has suspended IVF fertility treatment after the state's Supreme Court ruled frozen embryos are children.
We might see this spread into other states as well.
Anyone who destroys embryos in Alabama can now be sued and held liable for wrongful death. Still ahead, a father's pride watching his son score a Canadian dream. A moon lander built by a private American company successfully entered lunar orbit today.
IM-1 Odysseus lunar lander separation confirmed.
The Odysseus lander will attempt the first U.S. lunar touchdown in more than 50 years tomorrow. A hometown hockey dream came true for an athlete from Surrey, BC last night.
Said he's an every situation player, and what a memory this is going to be for him.
Archdeep Bains made his debut as a call-up for the Vancouver Canucks, becoming the 4th Punjabi player ever to play in the NHL, with his proud father watching from the stands.
Yeah, it was really special. I think
I almost kind of forgot to hit the pucks on the ice when I went out there, so that's how kind of, I was just in awe of being out there, so it was really special.
Baines had 2 shots on goal and logged over 13 minutes of ice time in the loss to the Colorado Avalanche. But that could not stop his smile. And after the break, from sport to song.
This ain't Texas. Ain't no hold 'em.
Smashing barriers in music.
So park your Lexus and throw your keys up. Stick around.
In a genre normally dominated by country musicians, Queen Bee has made her mark. The American superstar has become the first black woman to top Billboard's country music chart with her new song, Texas Hold'em. Here's CTV's Andrea Case.
If you say so, I'm gonna have to pack my things and go.
There have been many before: Ray Charles, Charlie Pride, Darius Rucker, and more recently Cade Brown and Mickey Guyton, just to name a few. But none have achieved what Beyonce did this week.
This ain't Texas. Ain't no hold 'em.
Beyonce made history with her new country song, Texas Hold'em. She's the first black woman to top the Billboard Country Songs chart with her single, Texas Hold'em, off her upcoming album, and it is number 2 on the Hot 100. Another single called 16 Carriages landed at the number 9 spot on the country charts. The reception was unprecedented for a black artist on the country charts, which isn't always the case.
In a perfect world, you get sober, I get skinny.
Former classical musician Brittany Spencer is now a successful country musician.
My dad particularly was pretty not scared, but he's protective. And I remember him specifically saying, like, why don't you go to Atlanta? Like, you know, why don't you go to Atlanta? Like, they might not want you in Tennessee. They might not want you down there doing country music.
Montreal's Allison Russell is experiencing the highs and lows of the music industry. 2 weeks ago, she joined an all-star cast of performers playing the clarinet and singing at the Grammys with Joni Mitchell, and she won Best American Roots Performance. The queer black artist, an 8-time Grammy nominee, was to be recognized by the house of her adopted home, Tennessee, along with fellow Tennesseans Paramore. Until she wasn't. The all-white group will still be honored, but she will not. Paramore says it's blatant racism.
I think it goes beyond dog whistle, whether their issue with me is that I'm black or that I'm queer or that I'm an immigrant to the U.S., I don't know. Maybe none of the above, but one can speculate that has something to do with it.
This ain't Texas. Ain't no hold 'em.
Beyonce has built a fan base. A week after the song's release, more than 80,000 people had used Texas Hold'em for their TikTok videos. Andrea Case, CTV News, Toronto.
Catchy tune. That's a snapshot of this Wednesday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.